there, I'm Toni Reece and welcome to It's Personal. Today I have a very special guest with me, Kris McFadden, and Kris is CEO at Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge. Welcome to It's Personal, Kris.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So take a moment and tell us a little bit about PA Adult and Teen Challenge, but also your journey to get there.
Sure. Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge is a faith-based drug and alcohol rehabilitation center right here in Berks County. And my journey to getting there is somewhat unique. I grew up in the Pocono area, up in a little town called East Stroudsburg. And as a young person, grew up in a broken home. I can remember still very vividly the picture of my biological father. The last time that I saw him, he was dropping my sister and me off at our mother's house. And he gave us our bicycles, and the last thing I can remember is seeing the back of this old GMC Jimmy. So we're talking in the mid to late 80s, and that gray Jimmy was the back of it leaving is the last time I saw my biological father. And moving forward, I never had any type of faith foundation or anything of that sort. I just played sports. I did a lot of focusing on myself. And it's interesting, later years, my mother told me that she didn't discipline me as a kid because she felt bad about the whole scenario with my biological father. But I started off on some shaky ground as a young person. I went through high school, found out that I was getting better at sports, and I was able to throw things very well. And that led me to be able to play a little bit in college. And the exact incident that led me to a lot of bad decisions was I was playing football, and probably the 10th or 12th play of the game, I was the quarterback, and it was my first time getting on the field in college. And I still remember the coach would always say, just if the person's not there, just throw the ball out of bounds. And for whatever reason that day, I just put the ball down and I just got back to the line of scrimmage. But something happened. And it's something that happened to me many times before. I was shirt tackled awkwardly, so I was kind of just ripped here, thrown on the ground. But this time, for whatever reason, I ripped my collarbone off of my throwing arm.
Oh.
So when that happened, I went to the hospital and I was given a little bottle of pills. And this little bottle of pills, this was probably in the early 2000s, this little bottle of pills I didn't realize would be something that would alter the history of my life. And not only did I, looking back on it, not only did I have that broken home as a young person, which I think many folks who have gone into addiction have experienced, no type of faith foundation or community or anything of that sort. But now I just ripped my collarbone off my throwing arm, which was the thing that I was the most passionate about in my life. And here I am with this little bottle of pills in my hand. So this little bottle of pills were a bottle of Percocets. And as we all know now with the opioid epidemic, that a lot of folks are unintentionally getting hooked on these powerful drugs. And it was probably a couple months in, dealing with all the trauma and just wanting to kind of just escape reality, that I found myself in a massive addiction to these pills through an injury that happened to me playing football. So fast forward, that little bottle of pills led me into a lot of different bad decisions, as I referenced a minute ago. And before you know it, I'm getting into trouble. I'm in and out of jail for stupid stuff. And in 2006, it was November 8th, 2006, I was entering into a court hearing. And during this court hearing, my lawyer suggested a program called Pennsylvania Adult and Teen Challenge as a way for me to go away for a longer period of time and try to just get myself together. I was about 26, 27 years old at that point. And I found myself, by the grace of God, being able to enter into this program. And as I got there, I can remember wondering what in the world am I doing here? I had no faith orientation as a young person, as I referenced, and now I'm in this faith-based drug and alcohol rehabilitation program, and I'm just learning a different way of life. And the beginning of my faith journey began on January 1st, 2007, and I just decided in my life at that point that I needed to do a 180. I tell folks in our program a lot that I was running in this direction, and for me, in active addiction and all, I just making lots of bad decisions, going full speed though this way. And once this faith side of my life came alive, I started to realize that I needed to run the other way as fast as I could. So I finished the program in 2007. I stayed on to do an internship. And when I began my internship, I was the lead janitor running our housekeeping department in our organization. And I just kind of rose up through the ranks from janitor to different roles, and I became a full-time employee about 10 years ago now, and became one of the departmental directors, and then eventually became the organization's chief operating officer, and then in 2015 became the president and CEO of our organization, and the first graduate of our program in its history to find myself in this position.
So I would imagine that the same attributes that you showed on the field are what the real skills are that have led you to become CEO of this organization. But there's a big distance traveled from when you had the injury to what you're doing today. In that journey, okay, what did you find? Now, you said you recognized when you went to this organization, you did not have a faith base at that time, but was there something that you recognized that you needed along the way that you had to work as a muscle to get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say that being in that state of addiction and being lost, that I found myself in a true place of hopelessness. And it's hard to really explain. I still have difficulty explaining what hopelessness is like, but for me, and for a lot of the folks that I talk to that go through this process, I had come to the point where I just accepted that I was going to be that way for the rest of my life. Hopeless.
What did that feel like?
When you finally give up hope and you just accept that addiction is going to be my way of life, that trouble is going to be my way of life, that the culture of addiction is something that I'm going to find myself grasping a hold of, and find myself just moving in this total direction to move away from a healthy sense of reality, and just accept that substance abuse and addiction is who I am. I identified myself finally in this way. And when I did that, I could even remember going through this period of time where I truly accepted that I was just not ever going to do anything with my life, that there was no purpose for my life, and hopelessness was the place that I was going to just exist in for the rest of my life.
So it really was a hopelessness. I'm almost picturing that it was almost like an arena that you were sitting in, that was this hopelessness filled with, within this space. So, okay, so now you're in this space of hopelessness. How did you flip it to hope?
That's a wonderful journey for me, because entering into this program and finding this faith orientation that I had never experienced before, and just really even just having a sense of just being healthy again, like going from a state of active addiction and just being physically unhealthy to getting out of that to becoming physically healthy again, being able to use my mind again and be able to think rational thoughts, to begin to have my emotions somewhat normal again. And then to have this point where I felt like I had been missing this thing in my life, this faith side of my life. And, I found that I was reading something even this morning in the book of Psalms, and finding that God cares about the oppressed. He cares about the people who are downtrodden and the people who are just broken. that began to make me just start asking some questions about is there something out there with purpose, and finding that that God actually cared about a person like me who was basically thrown out from society. And when I came to that point, and that's what I mentioned on, it was January 1st, 2007, that I was actually loved by God. And that's the point where my life went from that running this direction to this direction, because I started to see those things again, things like hope, things like purpose. You know, I started to realize that, you know, I didn't have to identify as an addict. I didn't have to identify as something that's worthless. That I actually had purpose and things like dignity, and that I was actually worth something. And it really started to open my eyes to say, you know what, maybe this isn't all there is to life, and maybe there really is some light at the end of this tunnel. And as I started to travel this path, the light just started to get brighter and brighter. And a lot of the dreams and things that I had just forgotten, and just simple things like going to finish school, and is there a day where I can have a family, and any of this type of stuff, that stuff just started to become more of a reality to me. And I went from this horrible, desperate place of sadness and hopelessness to being able to see again, and the light started to shine really brightly, to where I realized that there was a purpose for my life, and that I could do some things that I had completely forgotten were possible.
I think it is incredibly important. This show is about things that are deeply, deeply personal, and people advocate for in their life. And so just like now you can identify with what hope looks like, you also identify deeply with what hopelessness looked like. I would like to continue this conversation because we also talk about values and hope. And I think there might be people that are watching this that are going to understand and say, I didn't know what word to put on how I'm feeling, but that is how I'm feeling. And so I think I just want to expand on that a little bit, if you would be willing to come to a part 2 with us.
Sure.
Great. We'll be right back.